Hi, I'm Professor Beck Strah.
And I'm Professor Eric Bronson, and you're listening to Prison Breakdown.
2, 3, break!
Hate to spoil his fun, but we're gonna bust out of here.
2, 3, break!
I'm locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
2, 3, break!
I can honestly say I'm a changed man. No danger to society here. God's honest truth.
2, 3, break!
I'm not leaving this cell. I'll get out my way. The right way.
2, 3, break!
Ahoy, dudes.
Ahoy.
Welcome back to the pirate ship. We are recording this on a very happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. As one of my favorite holidays, one of your least favorites.
Yeah, it's not for me. As we've discussed, I'm currently in that no man's land between having kids and going trick-or-treating, which I don't have yet, and then going to the bars where I feel too old for the bars. Now, do you still go trick-or-treating with the youngsters?
No, I'm the candy hander-outer. I sit around at the house and hand out the candy to all the kiddos coming around and get to see everyone and have some scary music playing at the house. And the boss goes out with the boys, and well, they're old enough now. They go into their different grade directions. So one goes to 6th grade, one goes to 8th grade, and they have their pod of friends that just terrorize the neighborhood. So yeah, so it's
Like
fun. But editor producer Britt, you have plans, and they sound like they're a lot of fun. I wonder why the grumpy bug didn't infect you when it comes to Halloween.
The grumpy bug.
I'm a goth, so it's like my holiday. It's
Yeah.
my Christmas and Easter and 4th of July all put together.
It's fantastic.
It is the spookiest holiday.
Well, let me ask you this: were you ever working at an institution during Halloween? And what was that like?
I worked there multiple Halloweens, and I don't remember doing anything at all for Halloween. We would do maybe a potluck for Thanksgiving if people were working. Nothing for Halloween. Zero. They don't want corrections officers showing up in Halloween costumes. That's goofy.
You didn't trick or treat
What
with the
did you do?
inmates? Bring them some candy.
No, is that a thing? No, that's contraband, as
Contraband, yes.
we'll get to in a bit for today's topic as a continuation of last time.
Yeah. No, it's
Now, tell me, for handing out candy, I want to know, do you have a costume?
no, I'm
Like
scary
a permanent
enough.
costume you wear every year?
No, they just look at me and, with me being the gruesome person that I am, I'm the type of person that will make moms get up and leave with their child from waiting areas when they walk into it and see that they're oh geez, that thing might eat my child. So
That does not happen. Also, hashtag gruesome twosome for today's episode.
gruesome do some.
Because we're gruesome.
Yes, we are.
It's Halloween. Hashtag gruesome twosome. If you have a story about scaring children away, hit us up on X at the pod. Hashtag gruesome twosome.
That would be great. How about, speaking of some news of scaring stuff, how about a little news off the razor wire here, a little bit of an update.
Fresh news, hot off the razor wire.
All right, last time we were recording, I gave you a little bit of a story about 4 inmates that escaped from a Georgia jail. Since that, now you got to think about this has been a little bit. It's been just over 2 weeks since this escape occurred, and they have only captured one. They've only captured one of these individuals, so we still have 3. So the update is Chavez Stokes, who's 29, was apprehended inside a home in southwest Georgia, and that's pretty much about it. He was being held on drug and gun possession charges. And that's about all that we have for him. Now, the other inmates, Joey Fournier, who's 52 years old and who was who's being held on murder charges, 24-year-old Mark Anderson and 37-year-old Jennifer Barnwell are all still at large. And the FBI and the marshals are still searching for him, along with Georgia State Police. So this is a much longer inmate on the run, offender on the run, escapee, than what we're used to hearing. This is not normal.
No, not at all. And do you know the circumstances how they caught the one?
No, there's very little information. I think it's been a busy couple news weeks since then. We've been hearing so much about our ex-president's trials, and that's what I love about the updates that we get about whatever court he's in or whatever trial's going on or whatever witnesses. You're just kind of like, which trial are they talking about? Is this the one in New York or Washington or Georgia? There's so much going on, but I think it's, had it been a slow couple news weeks, I think there'd been a better update, but that's the only thing I was able to find is just that, they found him in a home that he was hiding in Southwest Georgia. So they don't say if this was even a family member of his, which normally, you'd expect they'd go to either a family member's house or a significant other's house to try and hide out for a while, but there's very little information. So once there is some more information about, this inmate being caught and the other three that are on the run, I will definitely bring it to our podcast.
Wow. Please do keep us updated. This is an ongoing situation, and hopefully we get a peaceful turnout.
Yeah. I still think we need to, look into, potential internships for the spring semesters for our students to search for these three down there. The bounty hunters. Talk about a hands-on learning experience.
Oh, wouldn't that be a cool internship to be a bounty hunter?
Yes, it would. Unless you had to work with dog. Oh, it's just awful. But yeah, it would be. That would be a lot of fun although of all the marshals that I know, that do a lot of that, where they are looking for offenders, it's a lot of, staking out joints and a lot of surveillance. And they said, they'll spend 7 days, 10 days in cars. And they said look, we stink. We eat nothing but fast food. And all we do is just watch apartments and see if we can find people. So that part isn't very glamorous, but, I think everybody wants to be a U.S. Marshal after Tommy Lee Jones made it look such a desirable job way back when in The Fugitive, right?
Yes,
I don't
made
know
it
that
look
it's all
very
that
cool.
fun.
And then don't forget U.S. Marshal Raylan Givens from the Justified series. That made it look sexy too.
Yeah, very sexy. Yep. It's everybody wants to do it, but it's just like CSI Miami and show Bones, any of those. Boy, does it look good in Hollywood, but when you look at the reality of it, it's not as exciting as it seems.
2, 3.
Break!
Now, Eric, have you ever been on a stakeout before?
No, definitely not. That's not a good thing for someone with ADHD.
When I interned at a sheriff's office in Washington prior to becoming a corrections officer, I got to go on a couple of stakeouts for, they called it Operation Razor's Edge.
Really?
Somebody was stealing razors from a local grocery store and selling them on eBay for a lot of money. And so we sat there for 5 hours one day, watching, waiting, looking for something to happen. And finally we see a guy come out of a store and go home. And that was pretty much the thick of it. Not that interesting, but my partner was my sergeant, and Sergeant Jim Upton, and much respect to him. He was a great guy. But
You're serious, huh?
Not a lot going on.
I thought when you said,
Yeah.
Operation Razor's Edge, this was going to be some kind of shaving joke or something, but you're serious. Wow.
No, I wish there was a joke. It's just my own experience from it says it's dull, but if you get a good partner, someone who's a good talker,
Mhm.
at least it passes the time well.
Yeah. Okay. That's fun stuff.
And I got to see this is what a stakeout is really like.
And so it made you pick your career
It's not
path.
going to be the most fascinating thing.
Yeah. No,
It may have contributed.
And you're able to figure out that you wanted to find ways to better stimulate your mind than staring off at a supermarket aisle or something. Is that what kind of store was
yeah,
it?
we weren't. This was a grocery, and we were in the parking lot the entire time. I didn't even get to look down the store aisles.
So you knew the certain person you were looking for.
I believe so. I think we knew his vehicle.
Okay. Now, I think the next question is, what type of razors? Were these like those Gillette, 80 blade razors where they cost $105 to shave your face one time? Those type of ridiculous things?
That is correct. It is like a Mach 3 esque razor. It was... Those things can go for a pretty penny.
We can understand why the stadium up here in New England where Tom Brady used to play is named Gillette after the prices that they charge for those damn razors.
Yeah, they can afford that stadium.
Yeah, definitely.
They're not messing around.
No, Kraft is doing well.
Anyway, enough of stakeouts. Let's move on. Let's get on to... This is me.
Back to Contraband, right?
Let's move on. Yeah, let's go back to Contraband.
Love it.
Break!
So, pop quiz.
Uh-oh.
How do we detect contraband entering the facility? What methods are used?
Well, we have metal detectors, we have wands, and we have pat downs.
Wands. Pat downs.
Yeah.
What else?
We inspect mail.
What else? We inspect mail? Yeah.
Yeah. And ask questions, and that's about it.
Quick question. Are they allowed to do cavity searches?
Under very rare circumstances. I've never seen it happen, but my understanding is if there's some kind of... I don't want to say probable cause because that's its own concept. If there were some kind of dire circumstance where they knew somebody had something on them, I've heard of it being permitted, but we also had a lieutenant lose his job because he ordered a cavity search on somebody. He was later hired back, but did not look good for a while.
Interesting. I think those are the major ways, aren't they? That we're able to find.
Those are the major ways, but we also do a few that you missed. One, we have strip searches, uncomfortable for both parties.
Yeah,
they're fairly demeaning to the person being strip searched, even at your most polite. And those of us, the corrections officers who had to do the strip searches, you feel a little embarrassed for them, even though you know that this is necessary. We also have patrol perimeters, so people patrolling the area, making sure that there's nobody throwing something over the fence. We have the fencing to try and prevent it. We have some prisons have body scanners. I've heard of some prisons having cell sense towers, which is a tower where they have a device that can detect cell phones in the area. That's getting really high tech. We also have swab systems to test mail and other objects for narcotics. We use shakedowns, going cell to cell, pulling inmates out, putting them out in the yard or somewhere safe, patting them down, and then searching their entire room. And then we also use canines to search not for just drugs and cell phones, but for other forms of contraband.
Well, when you were working, did you ever have a canine come onto the unit at all?
Never into the unit. My understanding is we did have canines come in. It was never on my shift.
Yeah.
But we did have canines come in to do some drug sniffing and work with the male officers. It was never while I was on duty in a unit or on duty doing mail. So I didn't see it, but it's something that is done periodically for a sweep. How about you? You ever see it?
I never saw it personally. We didn't have it when I was working, but I know wardens have told me in the past, one of the things that they like to do is have the state police show up during visitation, and have that unit parked outside, so that when people are coming in to visit and they just have, they have no intentions of having the dog sniff or, search anybody. They just have it there, and that's enough of a deterrent to keep contraband out, because they'll say they need to do this because they've learned about recent contraband coming in during visitation hours. And so they just say, okay, if we put this dog out here, it'll be enough. They also do that at the beginning of shifts, where they'll tell them, hey, we're gonna have the dog sniff you. We're gonna have the dog sniff your car too. And if it hits, we're gonna search it. But that's according to some of the wardens. I don't know how often that happens. I think if things get bad enough, they would do it. If you just have this incredible rise of contraband coming in, a lot of drugs coming in, or um, anything like phones that they might be able to, help detect, or just, start to deter people bringing it in, then you could see that, having that outside visitation area, or where the staff walks in for work each day, that might help drop things off a little bit for a while. But of course, as soon as a dog goes away, it's going to pop back up again.
No, for sure. So randomly doing it would be the most effective way. But also, one thing to talk about here is the outcomes. If they are walking around with the drug sniffing dog, and you're in the visitation area, the dog pegs you as somebody who has some kind of contraband on them, you have to submit to a search. And if you refuse, they can 86 you from the facility. And if they find something on you, they can 86 you from the facility. So you're not coming back.
Yeah,
that visit is not going to happen.
And we know we know that we can get dogs to, mark or hit on a car, or on a search, with the proper command to that dog. And it doesn't have to be a verbal; it can be a hand signal, and the dog will say, "Yep, there's something here," and they can search. And then, like you said, if there's that refusal, nobody's going to believe the person. Then hey, the dog said they were carrying something in, and they refused it, so they're convicted in the court of public opinion, or the prison opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. A refusal to them is just as good as this guy's guilty. So one way that we have also tried to prevent contraband is by using digital mail, by allowing inmates some access to digital mail to prevent contraband entry. So sometimes they will photocopy printed mail and send it digitally to inmates if inmates are allowed tablets or something of that sort. And some facilities that still allow real mail will only accept black and blue ink, because drugs can be disguised in other colors of pens.
Yeah, it's it's interesting, because as you and I do with our students, we give them the opportunity to make a pen pal, literally a penitentiary pal, an inmate. There are plenty of third-party websites that give inmates the opportunity to get some friends from the outside, so our students are able to write to them and just have general conversation with them. And that's one of the things that we do tell them, or at least I know I remember to tell them, hey, ink, blue or black, because those are the only inks that are allowed inside the institution. And it is very interesting what we get back from the inmates, whether it's handwritten or typed up. Some of the letters we've been getting back this semester are typed up letters, and the students aren't sending in typed up letters, but it's real. They're getting real mail back from them. So nothing that's being sent to them and being reprinted and then sent back out to the free community, because they're looking for codes and everything like that, and in terms of messages.
Yeah, that's super interesting. My students are only just now starting to send out their letters, and we haven't gotten back any replies, but I'm excited to see what comes through.
It's a great little exercise for these students. We have some that are very quick to get back to the students, and you can see some common themes in terms of, I would love some help with my case, or I would love some funding, or I'm looking for love and any interest. But But then there are also some inmates. So we got one inmate who's just recently wrote one of our students who's being very honest with her, talking about how he's received several disciplinary write-ups since being incarcerated. He's 22 years old. He's got 25 to life. We talked about in the course about, hey, take a moment to think about, the students in the class are 20, 21, 22. That's this guy's same age, and he won't have a parole hearing to the year 2048. It's daunting when you think about it that way, but it's great opportunities for these students to communicate with some inmates.
Totally agree. Now, Eric, do you know what the consequences of bringing contraband into a facility are if you are the offender?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now you're talking about somebody going to visit or an officer, or do you mean the inmate who's receiving? Which classification of contraband carrier are we working with right now?
I'm talking about individuals who take a prohibited item into a correctional facility or onto property owned or controlled by a correctional facility.
Well, I think you've got a wide range of, obviously you can get arrested, and do a little bit of jail time, and depending on what contraband you're taking in, whether you're sneaking something in or if you're tossing something over a fence, if it's a weapon, if it's something that can hurt somebody, or like the one we talked about in part one of this episode, where you're bringing a cell phone, and that's seen as a real danger because individuals can hand out hits, or coordinate criminal activity on the outside. Well, those can get pretty severe, and you can do some serious time for those. But I think majority of them are misdemeanor offenses, but I know there's some felony offenses there if you talk about taking in weapons. So that's some pretty bad stuff.
For sure. And helping inmates get prohibited items, we know now that it can lead to federal and state action. Some places like Texas, for example, you're looking at a third-degree felony, 2 to 10 years, $10,000 fine, and federal charges are also possible on the line too. Looking over across the pond, as they say, to our fellows in the UK, anyone in possession of an offensive weapon in prison, anyone who receives some kind of weapon that can harm others in prison, they're liable to get up to a 4-year sentence just for that.
4 years.
4
years in the UK.
4
Wow.
years.
That's shocking.
One cool thing that they are doing in the UK, though, is British jails and prisons. Some of them are allowing inmates to turn in contraband and report contraband like drugs or weapons and do it without punishment. Just have this amnesty period. Offer these deposit boxes on the cell blocks where inmates can deposit any kind of contraband. Hey, no harm, no foul, and we can look the other way. So they offer some amnesty for drugs and weapons.
Now,
but only in the UK so far.
I was going to say, do they test any of that for DNA? If it's been used in a hit and dropped in a deposit box. You're like, okay.
That's a very good question.
Yeah. Or did they just kind of, okay, we've got it now. We're good.
Now, we also see a lot of contraband like inmate weapons made out of regular products around the prison. So you take like a broom handle and you sharpen it off. And there are some companies out there, such as Briarwood Products, that have started to make these brooms and other prison tools out of this flexible but tough polymer. You can't take it and break it. You can't sharpen it and turn it into a weapon. They call them shank-free correctional tools. And that's kind of an interesting idea. You're inmate proofing a prison. It's like the idea of child proofing somewhere. But you are trying to think ahead. You're taking any kind of incidents in the past. Okay, an inmate has taken this, sharpened it, and fashioned it into a weapon. How can we take that item and inmate proof it?
Wow, that's ingenious.
There's a lot of interesting engineering that we've had in prisons.
Yeah, that's ingenious. I mean, obviously, there's still going to be plenty of things that the inmates are going to be able to find in the institution that we can't have the bunk beds. In these medium institutions where they're kind of like barrack style, where you can't have those be made out of soft plastics that could still be a broom because they'd collapse under weight. But wow, that's some really interesting technology. Maybe we need to get some of the engineering folks on campus to come on over and talk to us about how in the heck they would do that. It just seems like, okay, we get enough of it, we could melt it down and shape it into something, and maybe once it becomes a solid again, it would be hard enough to be turned into a shiv. I don't know. That's some great use of technology there, and engineering. My goodness, I had never heard of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's fascinating.
What the first thing they need to do is they need to switch the toothbrushes up. Of course, how frustrating will that be, having a floppy toothbrush?
Oh, inmates, the only toothbrushes I've ever seen are the little ones.
Yeah, but
Have you ever seen an inmate with a full toothbrush?
Oh,
I
yeah.
only see the tiny 2-inch toothbrush.
No, I've seen them with the long, not. I wouldn't say like, hey, that's an Oral-B toothbrush, but it's a longer one. And then when I worked, I mentioned I worked in the mental health facility. They had full length toothbrushes there, which I did not understand because a lot of these people were dangerous to themselves and others, and they could have worn those down. Now maybe they weren't. Maybe the patients weren't, didn't have enough exposure to prisons or the criminal justice system at the time, so they weren't thinking along those lines. But I was always shocked about the full length toothbrush there.
Yeah, I suppose you do need to relax a little bit and give inmates some liberties, but also ensuring some degree of safety. It's a really tricky act where you're walking on this high wire, trying to make both sides happy, trying to keep things in balance.
Definitely, and you can understand. I mean, at least my people, I could understand why someone who was sentenced to prison would definitely carry something around. It's, if you're not good at fighting, if you're weaker, smaller, because it is, we're talking about survival of the most violent in some of these places, right? Where people will just try to exploit you if you can't defend yourself in some way. Um, you can understand why folks are doing it, why they're creating weapons or trying to sneak weapons in.
Two, three.
Break!
All right. So, Eric, what are some of the consequences we're seeing? Like, what does it do to a prison when we introduce drugs into the prison, besides inmates getting high?
Well, what that does is that helps the inmate subculture function in a way that you start to have people that are indebted to other inmates. That whenever you end up with somebody who's able to sell or trade drugs, you're able to create a hierarchy, and that creates problems. So that inmate subculture kind of can become more important. Those rules, those unwritten rules that the inmates live by, that uh, don't have anything to do with how the institution is supposed to be run, a nice, safe place, can create opportunities for inmates to be exploited, become indebted to other inmates, and that leads to, now typically it's non-random violence, but because if you get indebted to somebody and you aren't able to pay back your debts, it's going to provide the opportunity for someone to you know shank you, or who knows what, to try and get even for things, so so they can felt like they're paid back. But yeah, it's not a good situation. It's like being indebted to the mob. People who were able to
Yeah, right.
run organized crime within an institution. It's not a great situation.
Certainly not. It can create these power
Yep.
struggles between people. It can create disorder. You always run the risk of potential overdoses and the potential for violence that can happen between inmates if someone's in debt and unable to pay their debts. We inmate Inmates will exploit other
Yeah,
inmates. It's something that does happen, and it's unfortunate, but it is also part of that inmate code, this set of unwritten rules that Eric and I love to study and talk about.
definitely. And the big thing about that is, The other part of the problem is, when inmates are trying to get these, drugs in or any type of contraband, and a lot of times it's coming through the staff. So it's creating those types of situations where we have corrupt staff who are then indebted to the inmates, or they're given some type of service to the inmates because they're getting paid on the outside. Again, it's not a good situation when you have people, inmates will talk about, oh, I own that staff member. That's obviously not something you want to be going on inside your institution. Um, so, and
No,
any of this
nobody
is
wants to
bad
be
stuff.
that owned person.
Right.
So besides drugs, we also run into some complications from communication devices like cell phones. These can allow for plotting. They can allow for escape plans. They can allow for planning murders, planning of bringing in contraband. It's not that cell phones aren't allowed just because corrections officers don't think inmates should have them, or they want to be mean, or there's some type of disciplinary reason for it. It's trying to ensure safety and security in the institution is the whole purpose of not allowing in something like cell phones.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the interesting things that we can see is right now going on. Not only do we have to worry about the safety and security of the institution and the staff on the outside, but also, there are TikTok accounts that are popping up that where inmates have cell phones inside the institution, and they're putting out videos, and man, do they get a lot of followers quickly. Everybody is, wants to take a peek behind that curtain and see what the heck is going on with inmates inside prison or jail. And one of the things that is not thought about with this is that, if there's enough of this going on, you can, where you have a cell phone that's well hidden but yet recording or broadcasting, you can start to record what are the operations or the activities of the staff inside the institution. We can start to see, one of the things that we no longer see at these newer institutions are towers, right? Because they have the vehicles that are doing laps around the institution. Well, they can, one of the advantages of that is the inmates don't know which direction and how often they're going to circle the institution, how, what makes them go in one direction versus the other. Well, they can start recording that and then start to get an idea about, okay, here's when we make a break to hop over the fence, or here's when somebody tries to break into the fence so that we all can get out, that sort of thing. And that's something that isn't talked about much, is, you're looking at the overall security of the institution when inmates have access to cell phones.
Right. You're looking for the patterns, the weaknesses in security, where they can exploit to potentially gain some kind of foothold, some kind of advantage over the corrections officers. And generally speaking, I'm not against the idea of allowing inmates to TikTok in prisons, as long as it would not hurt the security. Prisons are so much of a black box that maybe we should have people in prisons talking about what it's like to be in prisons and doing it in some kind of public forum where they're able to express what it's like in prison, show people on the outside what it's like, and give them just a small window of insight into what is prison like. That's not a bad thing.
No, I mean, and if you think about it, if the Department of Corrections is, we already have this. If they're getting paid by A&E to have, what is it, 60 Days In or whatever the hell the name of the show is, where they're highlighting inmates and who are fakes and struggle, trying to fit into the prison world. Why not have some type of exposure that we could regulate it, obviously, but it would be something where public would be able to see what's going on. I'm not saying, hey, give them cameras and let them walk all over the institution and interview the staff about what's their favorite costume they ever wore on Halloween. But if we had something where they could,
what a great interview question.
Yeah. An inmate uniform, but they could, there's some way that we could do that, where allow inmates to do short videos about what the hell they're experiencing, what their days are like, what the issues are, and getting to the courts, access to the courts, which is always an issue for inmates. I think the public could learn a lot from that.
Certainly. And we do have some windows of insight through podcasts like Ear Hustle where inmates are able to tell us about their experiences. But it's also subject to approval from the authorities in prisons. So there is going to be some kind of tailoring that's going on with the content itself. To be able to get raw, unedited content from people in prisons would be maybe to our advantage as well. And I'm always surprised by TikTokers from prisons where it seems like it'd be so easy to get caught.
Right.
You put your face on camera, they know who you
Right.
are. How hard is it to find you with a cell phone from there?
Well, it's one inmate taking the video of a certain inmate, and then they wander off and hide that. But you figure they're going to catch them. They're just going to keep monitoring them and see who that inmate, who's the star of the show, who's recording, who's walking in and out of their cell, who are they shaking hands with afterwards, when they after a count or something like that. That they're going to catch them sometime, unless, of course, there is a hey, don't catch me, and here's an extra grand, because people are getting rich making TikToks in prison.
Sure. People willing to look the other way.
Yeah.
Now, this leads me to my next hard-hitting interview question for both of you. What's your favorite Halloween costume you've ever had?
Oh, boy. I don't know. I stopped wearing costumes because I was such a big kid. Yeah, I know one of the ones that was my favorite is I went as Ace Frehley from Kiss.
Nice.
Yeah, I had the star in my eye.
Yeah.
And one of the
Oh, I was gonna say I think he's Star Child. Could not remember for sure.
I think and I know it. One of the parents in the neighborhood didn't like it. Told my mom that I look like Satan because she was allowing me to go as Kiss.
Gene Simmons was supposed to be the devil, though.
Well, to her, I think
Ace Frehley was Space Ace.
Yeah, I think to her all of Kiss was.
Oh, Knights in Satan's Service, KISS.
Yeah. So, what about you?
Pretty cool costume.
Yeah, it was fun.
I can't really think of any that I've done. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go with my banana costume because that thing is like it looks like a rotten banana at this point. I've used it so much. It's just got like brown spots and stuff like that all over it. I've probably used it for a good maybe, I don't know, 8 Halloweens, not in a row, but like 8 solid Halloweens. So I'm gonna go with the banana classic costume.
I like that. That's fun.
Pretty gross. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun because it's nasty.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's yeah.
Well, here's what I want to do. I want to join you some Halloween. You go as the nasty banana, and I'll dress up as a giant ape and chase you around.
Ooh, I like it. That's actually pretty fun. Yeah.
That's a great couple's costume. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about yours, Beck? What was your favorite costume?
So
is it going as what did you say you were yesterday? Baywatch?
Oh yeah, I showed up in my Baywatch jacket yesterday. That might be my favorite thing I own that I've ever worn for Halloween. I can wear that year round if I really wanted to. It's a cool Baywatch.
I was going to say I think you should.
Baywatch tank.
Yeah.
I don't see why not. It was the theme of my bachelor party, if there was a theme, where we went hiking in the woods and to a forest fair in Alaska. But I just love Baywatch. Let's put it out there. Baywatch it's one of my favorite shows. It's incredible. It's not good, but it is great.
I've never seen an episode.
Wow.
Oh, they will there will be ghosts. They will liberate a small Mexican town. There's multiple episodes with ghosts. In the last episode I saw David Hasselhoff's character is accusing a man of being a vampire.
Stop.
Stuff like that. It's incredible. They ran out of material to talk about season 1, where there was this lawyer who was also a lifeguard, and he has to decide which one he wants to do with his life.
So pick lifeguard over lawyer.
Absolute nonsense.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He eventually disappeared. I think he eventually chose lawyer over lifeguard, but he was really struggling with it for a while.
Oh. Well, there are some advantages being a lawyer over a lifeguard.
Name one.
You make a real living.
Well, no.
Living wage.
We're talking about a massive reduction in the threat of skin cancer.
Oh yeah, okay. That isn't
True.
That's an
And for
advantage.
someone who is very,
It's also interesting.
very bald, that's a real concern.
Oh, you can just wear a hat.
Yeah.
One thing I love coming at it from a criminal justice perspective is the lifeguards are always overstepping their boundaries. Like there are so many episodes where they'll go undercover somewhere. That's not a lifeguard's job. But I like that.
I don't know. Because I've never watched this. I only know about the commercials. They're, Hasselhoff and Pam Anderson running. That's all I know about it. So, when you say they're overstepping, I'm just no clue. So they get to fight, justice, and didn't The Rock redo a movie or something about it, and he's a firefighter in it or some crap like that?
I've not seen it.
Okay, all right. So I think that
I don't have a clue. I've not seen the film.
I think we have a film for Britt, and he can tell us about what happened because it can't be good.
All right, I will watch Baywatch and report back to y'all.
Yeah, we'll end the next podcast with the film minute with producer Britt.
Sure, why not? I'll make a theme song.
That's fantastic.
But it's something special. That's all honestly, your impression of Baywatch was all I had known until I went into it. And this has been it started out as a COVID project between me and two friends to try and watch the whole thing. And I think we're at season 7 out of 11 now.
Oh, you're really invested now.
It's an obsession.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we get together once every 2 weeks to sit around and watch Baywatch.
Oh my. Well,
it's a hobby.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
There are worse hobbies.
Break!
Let's talk about inmate perspectives on Contraband.
Okay. That sounds great.
So in Kenya, there's a prison, Kamiti Maximum Prison. And there's a research project there where the researchers looked at how contraband affects the potential rehabilitation of inmates. And the study looks at the negative effects associated with contraband use, including they found some increases in insecurity. There was more bullying, there was more violence, and people were more prone to withdraw from inmate subcultures. In this study, about 25% of respondents told the researchers that the expense of buying contraband in prison resulted in debts or being short on things, particularly tobacco, canteen items, and toiletries. So as we were talking about, people in debt in prison, that's a bad place to be in debt.
Yeah.
You're in there with some people who may potentially harm you if you are in debt to them. They can put pressures on your family to provide money, to send money, and you don't want them messing with your family.
No.
Absolutely not.
Definitely not. I mean, that's got to be, think about one of the most helpless feelings you could have is knowing that, hey, I wanted to get high one night in prison and now my family's being threatened on the outside because of that, because I can't pay this inmate off because the debt keeps doubling. Oh man, that's horrible.
Sure. There's no free lunch. People might tack on some kind of interest. They may apply harm just to put the pressure on you to make those payments. Some inmates in prisons are addicted to the drugs, and they need these drugs to avoid withdrawing from the drugs. So combine that with being in debt, and this can lead to some real tensions in the prison, and people will experience withdrawal symptoms, and we can end up with that combined with frustration, anger, other people taking aggressions out on them. That's a really tough spot for people to be in. It can also increase violence between inmates when we see this happen.
Yeah, and the other thing, you can just imagine trying to go through the DTs while you're locked up in prison. I mean, DTs are hard enough when you're in a health setting. And then when you're in a prison, man, that's just got to be awful. There's no comforts in a prison cell whatsoever, and for you to sit there and go experience the shakes and the fevers and the the vomiting, while your cellmates probably telling, smacking you upside the head, telling you, make sure you get the puke in the toilet. That's just awful.
Oh, entirely. Our inmates who were experiencing withdrawals, we would have them in a special unit where they were put into boats, which are essentially just cots on the floor, and they would be given more of a watch. So we would have to do rounds every 30 minutes instead of every hour. And these inmates, their one extra privilege is more juice. So if they want juice, you go around, you offer them more juice. You have to write on a log every half hour what they're doing at the time. Are they talking? Are they lying on their side breathing? Are they sleeping? So, whatever it is, you have to record that and make sure that they are not overdosing at the time or dying from withdrawals. And I believe there's only two things that you can die from with withdrawals. And those two things are alcohol and I want to say benzos. So those inmates had to be watched especially closely. But it was a tough place. Inmates would go into seizure. Some inmates would fake seizure to try and get out of there and go to the hospital. They'd go, "CO, I'm having a seizure," which is not how people
Right.
experiencing a seizure
Right.
will react.
They got the toothpaste and they're screaming, "I got the seizures."
It's not a realistic seizure.
No. When when somebody's hollering at you that it's probably a setup, and you need to start looking in the other end of the cell block because something's going on there. That they're trying to draw your
Yeah,
attention to.
exactly. They're making a smoke screen.
Right.
Interestingly, the one time I did respond to a real seizure was on the outside. I was in Harvard Square, walking down the street. This guy's walking the opposite direction, and then he falls on his face, and then he starts convulsing, and he lost a tooth or two in the process too when he fell on his face. But I was right next to him, and I did the stabilizing the head. You turn him on the side and call 911. It was weird. I've never been in that position to take action like that before, but the paramedics showed up pretty quickly, got him out of there, and hopefully everything turned out all right.
Yeah.
Either of you ever experienced anything like that where it's just a medical emergency and you happen to be that person there?
Well, I've had actually on two separate occasions, I've had students, one had a seizure and one kind of passed out in class. But, just talking about things being real, there's no, when an inmate or somebody's faking it, and they're screaming, "I'm having a seizure." There's none of that. There's no ability to be able to communicate. It's, the eyes are rolling back in the head. And there's no way they can do that. Definitely did not have any inmates, do that while I was working. I was lucky in that manner. But one morning when I drove in, we did have an inmate who had a seizure and then also a brain hemorrhage, and who ended up passing away from the brain hemorrhage.
Oh, wow.
And it when it's real, that's pretty scary when that stuff's going on, because we're not trained in anything to help those folks other than like what you said. Okay, we know, put them on their side, try the best to allow them to breathe, and call 911. Best we can do. So you were
right. We're not trained in that stuff.
No, but the way you acted, you were a hero in the situation, right?
I mean, in every situation, I like to think. Yes.
How about you, Brett? Have you ever been around folks that have had any seizures?
Oh, yeah. So I used to help run like group homes, and I was a medical assistant for a while, and I worked in like hospice and stuff. So I've seen a lot of different types of seizures, both petit mal, grand mal. Some of them are just like people, staring off into the middle distance, and then suddenly they come back to, and they're like, "What? Where am I?" And then, I've seen some violent ones that like, you know, bowels are emptying, and like, like arms are flailing, and yeah, seizures take all types of different forms. But yeah, the big thing is you don't know when you're having a seizure.
Yeah.
So like, no one's yelling, "I'm having a seizure." That's I don't think anyone's ever yelled that in truth before.
Yeah. I really don't think they
No,
yell
no,
out anything.
you would be incapable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Although people with seizure disorders, a lot of them do feel what's called an aura, like before they have a seizure, and so like a lot of people can like tell you, "I'm about to have a seizure," and then they seize. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, my ex-girlfriend before I met my now wife was an epileptologist, and apparently grand mal and petit mal are no longer terms that we use.
Really?
They don't classify seizures as such;
Oh.
they're just seizures,
Okay.
which is interesting. I had no idea. And the epileptologist's job of you're just looking at EEGs all day. It's there's got to be a tediousness to it, but I'm thankful that somebody out there wants to do it.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, let's move on to the inmate economy. Let's talk costs. Let's talk prices. Let's talk cash.
Ugh.
So, what do people use for money in prison, Eric?
Anything that anybody else wants. I know for us, a big thing, we were in Kentucky, we were right on the forefront of banning cigarettes in prisons. So cigarettes were on the way out in the 90s, and most states have gotten rid of cigarettes. So because that was a big thing, right? Being able to pay for something with cigarettes or a pack, whatever. And so inmates would trade just about anything they could get their hands on from the commissary. A big one where for us were the Little Debbies, where the inmates traded Little Debbies like crazy. And no pun intended, but man, did they want those ding dongs. All the inmates passing around the ding dongs. Who's got the ding dongs today? That was a hot ticket item in Kentucky. So yeah. And not the ramen noodles, but the Little Debbies and ding dongs.
I just finished a memoir by poet and professor Ravi Shankar, who I believe is now a professor at Tufts, a Providence resident, even. And Dr. Shankar talks in there about his experiences going to jail in Connecticut here and how they use soups, which we know is ramen, as currency. So they would use that for bets, they would use that for payments. So that's one thing that we see. We see soups or ramens or, according to Eric, snack cakes.
Yep.
Some places where cigarettes are not banned, they might use cigarettes. Some places, if they can get in real money, they'll call that green, and they'll use that. And they'll use other items from commissary, such as stamps. Stamps are a huge one. That's what they use in Rhode Island. Some places they'll use spices, they'll use coffee, they'll use clean urine for people to pass a drug test. That can be sold off. And in some places, people will dominate others with sexual assault and violence in order to receive payment. So it's a real spectrum of what can be used for payment. If we're looking at costs, we could, if I really wanted to buy a gallon of prison hooch, that's going to cost me about 25 smackers.
Yeah, that's not
So you
cheap.
can set yourself up real nice.
That's not cheap. That's pretty expensive for some low quality alcohol there.
Yeah, absolutely. And inmates use contraband as currency, which is interesting. So they might exchange that hooch for 20 soups or whatever. People use contraband as a bartering chip to make their lives easier in places, to make things more comfortable for themselves. They're complying with the informal norms of the prison setting, and that's giving them at least a bargaining chip. That's giving them some kind of power in some way.
And some of it also can just be, you're talking about some of the, not so friendly ways, but they can also, if an inmate can provide some type of service for another inmate. I know there are certain inmates who have access to crafts and hobbies, and if they can make something for an inmate that they can keep at the institution that might be kind of on that contraband border, edging towards it. But that, the one inmate who has the food or the, the ramens, whatever it might be, can't make because they don't have those skills, they might let them do it. One of the things we're talking about, ramen noodles. One of the things that the inmates have to do to produce the ramen noodles is use contraband to make it. They have to use a stinger to heat up the water inside their cell if they want it hot. So it's so you might be able to afford the ramen noodles, but do you have a stinger in your cell so that you can warm up the water? And if not, you're going to have some cold ramens.
Right. And some places will allow a hot plate
Mm-hmm.
in place of that stinger. And for anyone who missed last time, I believe we explained it, but a stinger is some kind of contraption that you're able to fit into an electrical socket that creates heat. It generates energy. It can be, it's often a makeshift tool made out of like paper clips, and I'm not even sure what
Just
else.
some wires.
What have you seen them made out of?
Yeah, so I mean, the most simple ones is they're just taking some wires, plugging them in, and sticking them in the water and electrocuting the water to heat it up. Sometimes they, as you said, they'll put in paper clips to make it a little bit safer. They'll take parts out of radios. Some institutions still have, I think there's a few that still have cassette players that are allowed. And or iPods rather than iPads or some type of MP3. Well, they take them apart. They're going to steal the inner workings of those because they can help conduct electricity, and then they can use that to heat up some water so that they can have some coffee or like you said, some soup on the unit.
Yeah, I might have mentioned this before, but giving inmates surveys when I was working on my dissertation, if I brought along real pens, on more than one occasion, I had an inmate take apart the pen and try to steal the spring therein. I would catch them, and it was one of those, you caught me. Like, they're not that embarrassed or anything. It's kind of a no harm, no foul. I'm not holding a grudge against them. I just know not to trust too much when giving a real pen, because they're going to try and take my pen spring.
Right. Yeah. Take it apart, steal that,
Ridiculous.
and all of a sudden that click doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So your pen's gone, dead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that inmates they'll look to get pieces and parts that may not be important to us. Like we don't think of a pen spring as a valuable object, but something like that in prison can give them advantage in some ways. All right. I think that is a wrap on prison contraband. Do either of you have anything to add?
I do not.
No,
because especially when we look at, shanks and shivs, we always wonder where they got the piece of metal from and then what are they wrapping it with. So it's a great way to bring an end to this episode, is to say that's a wrap on contraband.
Oh, thank you. You brought it all back around. Put a bow on it. Again, thank you to producer Britt. This has been Prison Breakdown. Please like, rate, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform you use. Until next time, I've been Professor Beck Strah.
And this is Professor Eric Bronson. Happy Halloween, as much as Beck hates it.
All right, team. Lights out.